Hey, it's me again. This is the second episode of Butt on Film. Uh, episode. I guess I'm calling it Butt on Film because butt, and also just most of the movies I'm gonna talk about are probably gonna have butts on them, or in them. So today the topic on course for that is a sort of review of Jess Franco's movies. I'm going to stick to the ones I own. I've seen more, but it's been a while since I've watched the ones I've rented or whatever. So I'm just going to stick to the ones I bought because they're a little more fresh in my mind or whatever. So we'll start with, it's going to be sort of in chronological order, but again, I don't bother to do any sort of real research or even look at the backs of the cases to see the dates of them to make sure. But roughly, they're in chronological order. Stuff on my shelf is like the way I organize my DVD collection doesn't have any sort of. If you were to look at it from the outside, it doesn't make any real sense. But it makes sense to me. I can find shit. So I'll start with The Awful Dr. Orloff. Which for Jess Franco, this was sort of like his breakout film. He was pretty much, he had done a couple movies before this, but this is the movie that was first a success, and also sort of the initial, forming of his style, which he would, over the course of years to come, really refine it or hone it to a very particular sort of thing he liked to do. I like, most of all with Jess Franco overall, I think I prefer his 60s era movies more than like his 70s era movies, even though you could argue those are more sort of studio controlled, not as like his weird freewheeling improvised jazz erotic horror weirdness that he would come up with later. They are a little more reeled in, but truth be told, with Jess Franco, a lot of this, I kind of prefer him reeled in. His like weird obsessions that he would do, he was such a prolific director. He had made so many movies. He just constantly wanted to be filming movies. So he pretty much, like, as soon as a movie would be done, he'd be filming another one. He would just go where anybody would give him like a very modest budget and do whatever. So he's made hundreds of movies. He's sort of like an even more prolific like Woody Allen, where you watch a few of them, you realize there's themes that keep repeating, certain things that they really like, and so they always have in their films. Oddly enough, maybe compared to Woody Allen, Jess Franco was possibly a bit less of a creep. For a guy who spent a large part of his life, probably years of his life, just filming women's pubic hair, he was probably less of a creep than Woody Allen. But okay, Awful Dr. Orloff. This is a movie that it's like a mad scientist movie. This guy's abducting beautiful women, performing horrible surgery on them. It's got this like great gothic look and stuff. That's what's playing on the background right now. This movie obviously owes a lot to the French movie Eyes Without a Face. So that was a big influence. That was like a big movie in Europe at the time, so a lot of stuff got influenced by it afterwards. Multiple times Jess Franco would sort of take the themes from that movie and revisit them and do similar movies to Awful Dr. Orloff, but a little bit different. I think he even did a sequel to Dr. Orloff at some point. I don't have that one, though. This one's great. Again, what hopefully will sort of keep me from rambling too much or going on too long. Two things. One, hopefully I'll finish talking before the nudity in this movie shows up. It's a bit late in the film, and it's probably stunt boobs. But the other thing is I haven't had breakfast yet, so I'm probably gonna be really hungry, and I'm drinking coffee. I'm gonna be all jittery and weird. So that's weird. If you hear like random noises from the background, just to warn you, my roommate Sarah is home this time, so you might hear little giggles every once in a while, or a joint being rolled, that sort of thing. So no worries there. The second one, I just got this. There's the Franco Noir double bill that Severin put out. It's Death Whistles the Blues and Rafifi in the City. I just blind bought this. I'm like, this looks cool. And I really like that era of Jess Franco when he's sort of more reeled in and he's doing interesting things with the camera. It looks really good. And so I'm like, oh, I'll give this a shot. Generally, a lot of Jess Franco movies, if I see them out in the wild, I'll buy them. Because even though he's not one of my favorite directors, I probably own more movies of his than a lot of directors who I would consider my favorites, partially because he's made so many more, but also because I'll just buy them because they're weird and interesting. So this double bill is really cool. Death Whistles the Blues is the first one on it, which is a neat little noir. I watched it and I was like, oh, I really like this. I'm really glad I blind bought this. It's sort of this, tale of, revenge of these crooks who are basically backstabbed by this wealthy head crook guy who now years later he runs the town. He's the richest guy in town. He's married the one guy who was killed's wife. And the interesting thing about it is the sort of villain of it, the guy who screwed over everybody, and the revenge is ultimately on him. He's the most interesting character. He's sort of developed this level of success, but at the same time, he's a very sad man. His wife doesn't love him anymore. Their relationship's fucked. It's just he's gained all the power he wanted, the power and money and everything, but ultimately he's left just a sad man. He tries to pick up this one young girl, and then young girl, I mean, she's a 20-something-year-old woman, and it's just kind of pathetic when he does, and he's awkward at it. So that one was really cool, and I'm like, oh, I'm really glad I bought this. But then I watched Rafifi in the City, and I'm like, that blows Death Whistles the Blues out of the water. It's amazing. It's really good. And that one, it's there's one of the cool things about Rafifi in the City is it has all these scenes that are almost pretty typical noir scenes, but just punched up a little bit because it was the 60s and it was in Europe. So I think these were both French films. Again, he would go wherever they gave him a little bit of money. So with Rafifi in the City, all those little typical noir scenes, there's a scene where the head gangster takes the detective guy, gets his goons to take the detective guy in the back and beat him up, rough him up a bit, but they really escalate it. They punch it up a bit, so it looks really painful. And they're dragging him down the stairs and stuff afterwards. There's a scene where there's the sort of cabaret singer, jazz club singer in this. She the detective guy gets her to check out the bad guy's safe so they can get these documents on him, and the bad guy catches her, and he shoots her, and just the way the camera sort of lingers on her face as she's dying, it gives it that extra level of, damn, I kind of felt that. That's really effective, and it's really beautifully shot. It looks amazing. really cool movie, actually, Rafifi in the City. Although maybe like of the two, the slightly more typical noir plot wise. I mean, both are pretty like a noir with a bit of a twist. So not exactly like breaking huge new ground, but both very interesting. And then this is probably my favorite Jess Franco movie, Diabolical Dr. Z. It's definitely the one, Dr. Zed, Canadian. The probably the one I've watched the most, at least. A lot of like, you're probably gonna hear me say I need to rewatch this one a lot, because a lot of Jess Franco movies that I own, I've watched once, and I keep meaning to get back to them because there's something in there that's really interesting. But later in his period, he got really like, his real big thing was like really like watching like some half naked or fully naked woman like just dreamily walking around an estate, like a castle or something like that, or just a nice house. And it's weird and hypnotic, but at the same time, he did it so much, and also like really long, prolonged scenes of lesbian sex. So he did it so much that it's both hypnotic, a little bit erotic, and also kind of boring sometimes. So depending on, how effectively he did it, like it's hard to go back and watch them again and again and again. A lot of the time, like with these like sort of softcore erotic scenes and these weird Euro horror, erotic horror movies. There's so many of them, so many erotic Euro horror movies from the 60s and 70s, and Japanese ones too. That like, and I own so many of them. You'd think like looking at my collection that I'm really into like softcore scenes of 70s era women just lightly tonguing each other's skin, like that's what it is for like 5 minutes at a time. And those are generally my least favorite parts of the movie. I mean, generally, unless it's pretty hot, but most of the time it's kind of dull. But anyway, Diabolical Dr. Z is not one of those. It's got more of a plot. It's, again, throwing back to the mad scientist stuff. This one's more like, again, a mad scientist revenge tale, kind of like similar to, it's actually like really similar to a Vincent Price movie from like sort of like his late 60s, 70s period, where he's doing all those revenge type movies like Theater of Blood and Abominable Dr. Phibes. So it's similar to that. A nice little switch up too is twist. The Diabolical Dr. Zed is a woman. It's the daughter of this guy. So you sort of, fucking spoiler, this guy dies like immediately and his daughter takes over. And she is the evil one. And she's great. And there's this like burlesque dancer who does like a spiderweb themed burlesque and she like gives her like poison tipped fingernails and like has her seduce guys and then kill them. It's pretty cool. Yeah, fun times. Looks great. And Succubus. This is gonna fall under the category of I need to watch this one again. Because the one time I did watch it, I was living in a shitty townhouse where like the walls were paper thin with like, and there were other guys living in other rooms. And so it was late at night and I had to keep turning the volume way down. It was super quiet. And again, this was, I think, the first time he really found his like style that he really loved. It's sort of like the blueprint for a lot of what would come afterwards. And this lady, I don't know, Janine Renaud, I think was like his first of his muses. So it's an interesting movie. I mean, I don't really remember much of it. Again, a lot of like her in like some sort of slip or something, just half dressed, walking around castles and whatever, like dreamily, and it's kind of creepy. Yeah, I'll watch it again at some point. Venus in Furs. This was the first Jess Franco movie I ever saw. It was pretty late in life. I actually saw one of his movies. This is the first one I saw all the way through. So Venus and Furs, and this is sort of like one of his more acclaimed movies. Like you say, critically acclaimed, but most critics don't bother talking about Jess Franco. It is like, again, it's very like thick with his themes, but like it's a revenge story of a woman from beyond the grave. I think it's been a little bit, but yeah, I think she's like sort of a ghost or something. So basically, Klaus Kinski's in it. That's always great. So yeah, again, like a lot of like weird like lesbian scenes and stuff, but in this one it just works for me a little better. The jazz music in it kind of works better. I think like when you get down to it, maybe what I like about it better is just the stockings in it are nicer. There's some sparkly stockings and stuff. And I mean, that sounds silly, but when you think like take into account like Jess Franco's filmography, the stocking factor is surprisingly important. So that one's fun. It's kind of sexy too. I mean, they're all kind of sexy. Virgin Among the Living Dead. I really like this one. This one's like, and especially like I should be specific. I really like this version that I own because it's dubbed. This is like a bootleg. This isn't it's a bootleg. It's English dubbed, and the dubbing adds this level of comedy to it that like some of the scenes. I mean, some of the scenes would probably be silly, even if they were in their original language and subtitled. But there's like one scene where this like black dildo suddenly appears in this woman's room, and she's just terrified of it. I think she's naked probably, and she's like like cowering in a corner from this evil black dildo. It's a power. But there's also like scenes in it that are like weird sort of scenes that are really effective and cool looking. There's this recurring thing, like this one character's father is dead, and I think like everybody claims it's a suicide, but he was actually murdered, and so he keeps showing up like in a noose, and like just the way they film it, or Jess filmed it, looks really cool and like actually creepy and kind of like weirdly that dream nightmare logic that he really likes works really well in it. But it's also like this version's very funny, so I find it very entertaining. Sinner, The Secret Diary of a Nymphomaniac. This one's an interesting one. This is one of those movies where it's sort of like reading about it and like hearing people talk about it afterwards kind of made it more interesting to me, or was more interesting than watching the movie itself. The I guess part of like what makes this more interesting is a Jess Franco erotic thriller type thing is this really downbeat, and it's sort of like not sex positive in a way, like, well, because part of the whole thing is like it starts with this the main character, the titular nymphomaniac. She takes this guy. She's like a burlesque stripper dancer lady in one of the many underground clubs that populate Jess Franco's movies. She takes this guy home after doing a sexy dance, and then she like drugs him, knocks him out, or gets him drunk, and he just passes out. And then she kills herself, but like makes it look like he murdered her. And then this is the very first scene. And then the entire rest of the movie is explaining how she got to that point. And it's sort of talking about how she's like a nymphomaniac, but sex for her is very like, it's the combination of she feels compelled to do it, but at the same time it's very like painful for her and messes with her a lot. So you say like, it's a more downbeat view of sex than Jess Franco usually has, But Jess Franco movies usually have this like sort of like clashing idea of like sex and that sort of thing. I mean, they're often erotic horror, so you have that mix of like there's the sexy stuff, but it's also got this element of like either supernatural or like threat to it, which I mean, a lot of women can probably relate. The sex has like can have this element of threat to a lot of problems. But yeah, so like a very interesting idea. They're definitely like I remember watching it and um, not being super compelled by it, but at the same time like there was enough in it that again gotta rewatch it. Whatever. Lorna the Exorcist. Between this and the two Franco Noirs, I think that these were the things that made me want to make this video, because I just watched them recently. I just picked up copies. Lorna the Exorcist, and they're all really good. They're of his movies. They're ones that have been more interesting to me. This one again, very in his wheelhouse. Like at this point, lots of close-ups of like vaginas and pubic hair, and there's ladies like licking each other's pubic hair, to the point where my first thought is like, pulling it, sort of thing. It's the 70s, so nobody's trimming. Lena Romay, the biggest of the Jess Franco muses, his longtime life partner, I guess. I don't think they ever got married or whatever. So she's her and Pamela Stanford, who plays the Lorna of the title. I think Lena Romay plays Linda. There's Lorna and Linda. And Lorna, the plot is sort of like this weird ethereal thing that's kind of hard to explain. Talking about like this witch, like possibly like by proxy having a child, who the child is also her lover, and transferring her powers to it. So there's this weird sort of like a little bit of an incestual. There's no a little bit of an incestual. There's a lot of like incestual themes in this sort of thing. So yeah, definitely racy, but like some really neat concepts. And again, like he does this thing where he because he never really had like a budget, like a big budget. So he would do this thing where he would like come up with weird ways to get across interesting ideas with just like how he would frame a camera and the bits of dialogue and that sort of thing. And some of the dialogue in this, it's like this weird, almost like a like high drama poetry, but also like corny and like funny because of the dubbing and that sort of thing. But it's entertaining and it works. I like it. I like it a lot. It's just sort of like, I'll just keep all the Soledad Miranda ones all together. So we'll do those now. I got the fancy fucking Blu-ray of She Killed in Ecstasy. Look at that shit. It's so fancy. Oh my god. Soledad Miranda, like another of the Jess Franco muses, came like right before Lena Romay unfortunately died very young and tragically. Car crash, I think. So sad, but she was really good and very beautiful. And this is like, again, one of those like revenge plots sort of thing. Very like good looking, like very cool sets and like lights and like her costumes are amazing in this. This movie looks great, and the revenge is fun, and it keeps stuff sort of moving along. So like again, like Jess Franco's weird passions sometimes came at the cost of his pacing. So this one kind of seems to be more consistently entertaining than some of his other stuff. Speaking of, Vampiros Lesbos, probably his most popular or like most known movie. This was actually like when I said before that Venus and Furs was the first one I saw. I mean, first one I saw all the way through because I used to, catch bits of this one on cable TV back in the day. As a teenager, I probably rubbed one out to it, at least. That sort of thing. But, I mean, I don't know how many of these. Anyway. So, Vampiros Lesbos, honestly, I'm not crazy about this one. After having seen it all the way through a couple of times now. I know it's like, again, one of his more celebrated ones. Soledad Miranda. Other people also in it. It just, again, he gets a little too into his weird passions in this one. There's so many long lesbian sex scenes and weird underground sex club stuff, and it sort of loses my interest. Actually, with this like weird Blu-ray, there's you get a DVD version of the Spanish release, which they had to cut the shit out of it. They had to cut all the erotic stuff out of it, or all the nudity at least. So they it's presented as more of a straightforward horror film, and I had to watch that version of it first because when I bought this Blu-ray, I was cat sitting for a friend at his place, and he doesn't have a Blu-ray player; he just has a DVD player. So I had to watch that version. And I'm like, actually, kind of, for me, it worked better that way. It just is a movie. Like, it's kind of cool to see that, like, Jess Franco's movies can still work as movies if you take the nudity out of them, which is such a huge factor in his movies. So yeah, quite like, I mean, I don't know. Again, maybe I should just rewatch it. Nightmares Come at Night. Probably the last Soledad Miranda movie. I think she probably died during the filming of this or shortly after. She's not in it much. And the scenes she's in at times feel like they were meant for a different movie and they just sort of mashed it together. But I actually quite like this one. Again, like it's just a lot of the same stuff, but the weird, dreamy visuals sort of seemed a little more surreal and cool and neat. I can't remember the exact reason why, but I enjoyed this a little more than some of his more Jess Francos. So yeah, that's cool. Night Has 1,000 Desires. This might be the one I own that I like the least. Apparently this was in Spain. So he was filming in Spain at this point. Apparently, like, these were especially low budgets for him, though, again, he never really had much of a budget. But again, it's a lot of the same stuff. There are some good looking scenes in this, but a lot of Lena Romay walking around this hotel, ending up in threesomes with random people. I don't know. It didn't do much for me, but maybe I'm missing something. Barbed Wire Dolls. I'm almost done here. Barbed Wire Dolls, again, I don't remember liking this one very much. Which, this one I think gets a weird sort of love, even though, like, it's clearly a bad movie. I mean, I enjoy bad movies, that sort of thing. I mean, it's hard to say, like, especially talking about, like, a director like Jess Franco, like, what separates bad from good. He's so, like, on this weird, like, other plane. But Barbed Wire Dolls, like, it's a women in prison movie. So, like, probably filmed in the Philippines or maybe just wherever. Maybe they found a bush somewhere. Women they're just putting these weird, like, they give them like an overshirt is their prison guard, but no underwear, obviously. Sometimes some of them I think have like ripped stockings, because again, stockings important. Thigh high, these weird like thigh high boots as well. Very like keep recurring in his movies. Like he really like he liked the things he liked. I do have to rewatch this because Keenan always talks about there's this one scene where it's a slow motion scene, but they didn't have like the right camera to do slow motion, so they just had all the actors pretend they were moving in slow motion. It happens later in the film, so you kind of got to get through the rest of the movie to get to it. But you know, fuck it. I'm sure, like I watch whatever shit, so yeah, I'm not above rewatching Barbed Wire Girls. And just like Ilsa the Wicked Warden will be the last one. This is an Ilsa collection, bootleg. Ilsa the Inferno collection. It's all the Ilsa movies. The unofficial Ilsa movie, The Wicked Warden by Jess Franco, was also had Diane Thorne. I think they were originally it wasn't supposed to be Ilsa, but they sold it in different countries under the title of Ilsa to sell more copies or something, because Ilsa had already been established as a thing. If you don't know who Ilsa is, Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, or Tigress of Siberia, Harem Keeper of the Oil Sheiks. She's this, is this reoccurring, like, there's 4 movies basically, and Diane Thorne always played Ilsa. Diane Thorne was she's this, like, okay, so she's sort of like, you look at it in this way, she's like this weird, almost like being that keeps coming into existence in different places, and she just like gets off on sadism and torture, and they're a pretty funky series. She-Wolf of the SS being probably the first and most famous, though Tigress of Siberia is really funny because it's very Canadian. What else? Yeah, so Wicked Warden, Ilsa Wicked Warden is, I enjoyed it more than Barbed Wire Dolls. There's this really funny part where Lena Romay is the tough, it's a women in prison movie, and Ilsa's the Wicked Warden. So Lena Romay is like the tough head, what do they call it? Like, she's like the head of the nasty girls in the prison. She, like, you know, beats up like the doe-eyed main character who's sort of come in innocently. She's getting beat up by Lena Romay or whatever. There's one scene where Lena Romay takes like a nasty shit and then makes this girl eat her ass right afterwards, and it's pretty wild and really funny. So highest possible recommendation. So there's like legitimately some really funny scenes in it. Probably not intentionally, but I find it really entertaining. So yeah, that's all of them. So many Jess Franco movies for a guy who, like, I don't know if I like really love Jess Franco as a director overall. I definitely have mixed feelings about him, but there's a lot of stuff there, and I really respect his, like, I just constantly wanted to be filming as approach to filmmaking. He just wanted to live on a movie set all the time. Any director who's like long-standing director who's, when you start seeing like their weird little obsessions and stuff, that often I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I get it, you know, like I get it, Woody Allen, you like having some older man date a teenage girl or whatever and become her Svengali and stuff, like whatever. So he definitely falls into that sort of pitfall, but He generally has enough interesting ideas to make his movies worth watching, or at least like, and often they're very visually nice, so that's always a plus. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't watched a Jess Franco movie, try it out. You know, pants on or off, however you want to do that. Um, there's definitely ones I'd recommend, but like I'm sure like fans of Jess Franco have very different opinions than I do. So I don't know. I guess like of the weird big Euro horror, like erotic horror directors, I kind of prefer Jean Rollin, even though he did less and he almost like more obsessively stuck to his themes. But there's this weird like gothic poetry to his stuff that I think works more consistently in his movies than Jess Franco's does. I mean, there's definitely a lot of gothic poetry type shit going on in Jess Franco's stuff, but I don't know. I don't know, man. There's just a bunch of naked people walking around castles for a while jazz music plays. I mean, if that's not your bag, don't watch it. It's not gonna be good. All right, catch you next time.